Senator Joe Manchin continues to be a massive pain in the ass, and he is starting to piss people off back in West Virginia. So now, according to a recent article in the Washington Post, his voters are furious that he had forced Democrats to take out certain social programs from the Reconciliation Human Infrastructure Package. As the Post reports, the Democrat from West Virginia implied that he would not support extending monthly payments from the expanded child tax credit without any changes. So changes, of course, would be means testing. So we're gonna do means testing, and we're gonna make sure to give Americans less if they make, I believe, over $60,000 a year, which in some places in this country is nowhere near wealthy. So now he said, and also adding work requirements. In fact, here's what he said in an interview. Quote, "There's no work requirements whatsoever. There's no education requirements whatsoever for better skill sets. Don't you think if we're going to help the children that the people should make some effort?" So understand what he's doing. He's implying that you're all lazy. If you get the child tax credit, y'all are lazy and you should be working. And, and let's not ignore the fact that most Americans are working and are still in poverty. And that's a huge problem. And there's a lot of people who, by the way, are unable to work because childcare costs so much in this country, or they're disabled from COVID, for example. If you've had long COVID or you have any sort of permanent health issues from COVID, you could be technically disabled now. And so there's a lot of issues with that, with putting in these so-called work requirements and all this, disastrous means testing that they're trying to do. So now, according to the report, they talked about a family of Charleston, West Virginia. This is Ruth and James Jones, and they are barely getting by while raising two grandchildren, ages 10 and 17. The Post noting that they're surviving on James' part-time earnings as an Applebee's cook and Ruth's Social Security payments. Like thousands of other West Virginians, their financial burden has been eased since July by monthly federal payments, championed by the Biden administration to support families with children. Now, however, those funds, which total $500 a month, could vanish if lawmakers agree to the demands of their own Senator Joe Manchin III. According to the 64-year-old James, "We want Manchin to take a little bit more active role in protecting us as far as West Virginians. We're not a bunch of deadbeats. We work for a living, and we're due." So, all right, $500 a month. This is what Joe Manchin is so upset about. A family getting $500. Wow. He makes it sound like, oh my God, there are people getting thousands of dollars sitting on their butt and they're not doing anything. We should means test them. These people are on $500 and living high off the hog. Oh, that person's got Social Security. Well, obviously they're very incredibly wealthy. They're super, super wealthy. We need to tone that down. We are just giving too much money to poor people. You know how much the average rent is in West Virginia? And it, of course, varies from place to place, but the average, $925 a month. $925. And by the way, that's for a 2-bedroom apartment. For a 3-bedroom apartment in West Virginia, about $1,100. Joe Manchin is complaining about somebody getting $500 in a tax credit. Now, for the rest of the country, by the way, the average rent is about $1,650 a month. So these payments, things like that, don't even touch it. Don't even touch it. And by the way, Joe Manchin, he looks at that and says, no, $500. Too much. You should get means tested. Absolutely. Means tested. Let's means test everybody, he says. Now, maybe we should means test Joe Manchin. Because Manchin made between $591,950 and nearly $1.5 million in West Virginia, in 2020, from EnerSystems, a coal company he founded in West Virginia. That's not all. Between 2011 and 2020, the West Virginia senator made between $4.9 million and $5.1 million from coal companies. And in 2020, he had between $1.4 to $5.8 million held in coal. Manchin also brought in tens of thousands of dollars in income from Farmington Resources, a mining company run by his son, Between 2011 and 2020, Manchin received between $80,000 and $250,000 from dividends and interest in the company. So Joe Manchin gets all that money, but if you get a $500 credit, you damn well better be super, super poor, or else you're getting nothing. Nothing. Ridiculous. Now, there's more, of course. According to Beth Zarrett, President and Chief Executive of Catholic Charities West Virginia, for some of our clients, this is keeping them above water right now. West Virginia just has so many challenges. We struggle with jobs. We struggle with our people leaving our state for other jobs. The child tax credit has been huge. Seth DiStefano, policy director at the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy, also said this: the opportunity to cut child poverty in half in West Virginia is one that we have to take, and imposing a work requirement basically neutralizes that benefit right out of the gate. Let's be clear, parenting is working, raising kids is work. I feel like that's such an important point. Now, I am not a parent myself, right? So I don't know firsthand, but I can only imagine how difficult it is to take care of another human being, a mini one. Oh, could you imagine? I think I don't want to do it. But like, okay, it is work, and yet you don't get paid for it. No, of course not. Now, interestingly enough, childcare. Gee, you want to guess why childcare is so important? Oh, right, because it's a lot of work. So in the childcare sector, super, super expensive. That's why so many parents can't actually afford to pay for childcare, which would be included in, or at least was going to be included in this bill. That is until, of course, Joe Manchin and the corporate Democrats try to strip it out. It's just horrible. Now, there's more. Jess Greenleaf, 38, who gets $550 a month, explained that how much she has come to depend on the help, says it takes close to an hour to get anywhere important. A lot of the resources that typically are available elsewhere don't trickle down to us. Many of our jobs are related to the gas and oil industry, and a lot of those jobs are on hold right now or are out of state. She added, what we see are a lot of upper class poor. These are individuals who make too much money for programmatic support, but are still struggling on the whole. So understand, this is why I hate means testing. One of the many reasons, I guess, because generally it's based on outdated measures of poverty, right? And so these are things that don't necessarily take into account the different costs related to living in this country. And so the high cost of rent, high cost of student loans, of course, the fact that you need like an internet connection and a computer to be able to find jobs and find careers and do school and things like that. There are so many different factors that this does not take into play or into account. And so you get to a line, though, if you're poor, you get to a line, and if you're under that line, of course, you get help. Now, that line is incredibly low. You have to be very, very poor. You have to be pretty desperate for that, okay? But if you go over that line, a couple bucks, $50, right? That help's gone. Just gone. So, I mean, think about it this way. You work at Walmart, and you're making $8.75 an hour, which is a fairly standard wage for Walmart. You get a raise to $9 an hour. Oh my God, you got a 25-cent raise. But that's just enough to put you over the line that your food stamps that were at $300 go down to $16. Now your income has not gone up significantly. Oh, but you make too much. Sorry, we're going to have to take the food stamps down. You got a raise and you're worse off. That's what happens in this country. It's horrible. That's a problem. That needs to get fixed. And you don't fix that by cutting or doing more aggressive means testing. No, you do stuff to try to help the American people get out of poverty. And you know what? A big way to get people out of poverty is to have incredibly strong and robust safety nets, not only to catch people, but to help them bounce back. And that, of course, one of those things means higher wages. You've got to guarantee people can have a higher wage, high enough to live. And so that's why it's frustrating. And now this tax credit, again, should be one of those universal programs. And I believe that a lot of the programs we have should be universal. You know why? You make it universal, it's a lot harder to fight against it. A lot harder to try to get it to go away. It makes it harder so you can't pit these two different groups against each other. And that's what a lot of politicians do. They will pit groups of poor people against each other. Like one is slightly poorer and gets these benefits. And then you've got other groups that are hanging by a thread. And you say, well, we're not the real problem. The politicians, the giant corporations taking all the money and this upward redistribution of wealth. No, it's the guy over there who's taking just a little bit more in government handouts than you. And that's, of course, how they'll phrase it. Oh, they're the ones taking your stuff. Not us. No, it's those guys. Go fight each other, and then we're going to pick your pocket behind the scenes. So, and again, this thing, look, this tax credit cuts child poverty in half. Half. We should go the full way. Instead, we're having an argument of like, no, we should means test that so that less children can be out of poverty. Less children. And you know why? It's because Joe Manchin don't give a goddamn about the kids. No, he only cares about himself and his boat full of money. Literal boat full of money. Hey, you know what else hurts the kids? Climate change. Climate change from the dirty coal business. Look, this guy, it's amazing we have a system where an openly corrupt coal baron can sit there and make decisions on climate change. I mean, it's disastrous. He does not deserve to be called a public servant because he is serving himself. Serving himself. And so, hey, you know what? West Virginia, if you're unhappy, and you should be with Joe Manchin for opposing the Democrats' Build Back Better program, maybe you ought to show him the next election and kick him out. And maybe vote for somebody who's more progressive. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.